My name is Nebo, and this is my reading of 50-Foot Ant's second story. Chapter 1, 2nd of 19th Special Weapons Group, Restricted Area, Western Germany, Late Fall, Early Winter, 1989. I leaned against the tank and lit a cigarette, my eardrums aching from the blast of the 120mm cannons. The tank rocked backwards against my back, but I ignored it. We weren't supposed to be on the firing line, but that was commonly ignored because the CDATs made us carry the rounds ourselves. And if they were going to make us carry the rounds, then we did it our way. It worked well for nearly a month. Why change anything? The 168th Armor Commander was a cool dude towards us, even if his men thought he was a total cock wrapped in a complete asshole. He let us have our own GP small tent, let us set our own hours, and pretty much left us alone unless his tanks needed ammo, or he needed us to go out and get him something that we could get him and didn't really want it to be tied to him. We had our own vehicle, CUCV-15, the Gypsy Wagon, but he gave us fuel coupons and we went and acquired things like candy, porn mags, booze, real food, whatever he wanted. We didn't ask questions why someone wanted something. Nancy went by, carrying a box of 120mm APD SFS DUT in her arms, glaring at me as she went by. But I just smiled at her and blew smoke at her.
I ought to set this down and kick your ass,
she snarled, but kept walking. The tanks all fired 3 rounds, then silence settled down on the range. Normally, range control would be yelling to the training NCOs who would be yelling to the various people who needed to know the information. The CDATs used their onboard radios to talk back and forth, which made the range have an odd silence even with the roar of the turbo diesels from all the tanks.
"Hey, Corporal Ant,"
came from above me. First Lieutenant Victors, a tank commander in however the fucking CDATs did their rank structure. I'd had it explained to me like a dozen times, but I'd probably know how it worked if I'd cared enough to pay attention. "More ammo, coming up," I called out, pushing off the tank and heading towards the area where we'd stacked the rounds.
"And put out that cigarette on the range,"
he yelled. "Then get out of your fucking tank and get your fucking ammo yourself," I tossed over my shoulder. He yelled something back, but I didn't catch it and didn't much care. The BCO had made it pretty obvious that as long as we didn't piss him off, nobody else could touch us, which pissed off some of the more stark officers. When I walked over the ammo stack, the reason why we did what we want was obvious. Boxes of 120mm APD SFS DUT were stacked neatly on the pallets. Over 24 pallets were left, each pallet with 40 boxes. Each box containing 2 foil-wrapped 120mm armor-piercing discarding Sabotvin stabilized depleted uranium tracer rounds. 168th had been out of training funds, had just enough to get to the range and use training submunition shot, which no tanker liked to use. He told us privately that he had a lot of new men that had never handled the hot rounds, and I told him that maybe something could be done about that, as long as he'd understand that my crew was a bit eccentric. So instead of 500 practice rounds, I'd hauled over 500 war shots, 750 submunitions, and over 15,000 rounds of 50 cal APIT rounds that had been marked Condition Code H down to him instead of it being shipped back to the States for use, and gotten it for him without him blowing through the rest of his training budget with some creative fast-talking to a few people. Which meant to the BCO that I could dance naked on top of the tank with a whiskey bottle in one hand and a naked Nagel in the other, covered in paint and chemlight, with a fire built on the back deck of the tank, and he'd bang the drum. I grabbed 2 boxes and hefted them, waddling over to the tank. The rounds were heavy as hell on their own. In the box, in the foil, with 2 of them, they weighed a goddamn ton, but I was used to the weight. It beat when we were out with 2nd 27th Field Artillery and hand-to-hand pack fast-cam rounds for the lazy fucks. 200-plus pound rounds, and they just stood and watched us hand-hump the fucking things while they kicked back between each firing set. Only thing lazier than an artilleryman was an officer's driver. I dropped the boxes, then heaved them one at a time on the side of the tank, scrambled up onto it, and used my knife to pop the metal bands on the wooden box. I ripped open the foil, pulled out a round, and handed it up to the PFC who was staring at me. "Don't chew on them or stick them in any orifices," I warned him. He gave me a nasty look and passed it down. Considering he was in shirt sleeves and I could see the heat billowing out of his little mobile foxhole, his opinion of me didn't matter for shit. I handed off the other 3, then jumped down and collected the boxes, heading back to the little ATP we'd built. He yelled something, but I ignored it. It was probably gibberish anyway. It seemed like most tankers could barely speak any recognized language. Only thing dumber than a tanker was a finance clerk. Nagel thumped her shoulder into mine when she caught up with me. Her auburn hair was sweat-matted, and she snagged my cigarette and took a couple of drags before handing it back as we walked into the ATP. Now, by regulation, you shouldn't smoke in an ammunition transfer point. You could catch the ammo on fire, or if my instructors at AIT were to be believed, you'd spontaneously combust and explode with the force of 1,000 suns and kill a bunch of Dutch orphans. Oh wait, the Dutch orphans were what Blackhawks crashed on. My bad. But the chances of a cigarette butt causing fucking depleted uranium on fire was right up there with Nagel becoming a virgin. It ain't happening. It isn't to say she was loose or a slut, she just liked fucking. It was an open secret in the unit that she was as bisexual as she was predatory, and would chew up someone of either sex and spit them out. As pleasantly as possible, of course. A lot of people cut her slack about it. She worked hard, she never complained more than a soldier was expected to, never rode the cotton pony to get out of work, everything a female in the army should be, a soldier. Bomber was talking to the 168th BCO, and I could tell by how thick his accent was that he was upset, and when they saw me, they both waved me over.
Tell him, man.
Bomber said. Tell him what? I asked.
To tell our new CO that he needs us down here, that we can't be sent back to the unit.
Bomber told me, and I knew I'd just gone pale. Oh fuck, a new commanding officer? That was what, the third in 6 months? I just knew he was going to be as stupid as,
We did things this way in my old unit, and since we jammed oranges into our assholes before PT there, why, we should do it here.
as only a new CO for our unit could be. Not to mention, he'd be mad as fuck to be sent out to our own special hell. We'd been without a CO since the CO had backed his car over half of 1st Platoon, backwards down the hill, crashed into a tree, then fought with the arresting MPs after giving us a "don't drink and drive" speech. He'd blown a .25 at the MP station. The next guy who'd been grabbed to be our CO had resigned his commission in Frankfurt rather than be sent up to us. The guy after that had gone AWOL. The guy after that had been arrested for physically assaulting the 21st replacement officer who assigned him to our unit. According to the rumor mill, he'd rather do time being pounded in the ass at Leavenworth than be our CO. The guy after that had shown up, taken one look at the company records, and drove off screaming profanity at us. He'd stolen CUCV-9 and left it in the parking lot of Frankfurt Airport. Gee, you'd think people didn't want to hang out with us. Every time, the new CO pulled us out of the field, had our rooms inspected, brought some of us, like my brother and his knuckle-dragging thug, Sergeant Nails and his crew, and of course, me, Bomber, and Nagel, and told us things would be different now that they were in charge, inspected the equipment, changed all kinds of shit around to make it more efficient, then usually flamed out spectacularly. And then things went back to normal the way we'd done things since the unit had been reactivated. My favorite CO had been screaming at my brother after calling us both in to figure out which one of us had done it in front of another unit CO, when he suddenly got a bloody nose, began barking at us, bit my brother on the leg, and was hauled off barking and howling. Oh yeah, and he'd peed on Daphs, jumped right up on her desk, yanked out his cock, and peed all over her, barking at her the whole time. Oh yeah, and he humped the file cabinet. Sir, someone has to supervise the handling of the ammunition, I told him.
Someone from 144th Ordnance is on the way,
He told me, and shook his head.
Sorry, gentlemen, and lady, but you've got to return to your unit immediately.
Aw, fuck. Not these assholes. Every goddamn time. I could have sworn that they had a squad on standby, just hanging out in the day room smoking cigarettes and pumping iron, just drooling over the chance to fuck up my plans.
God damn it.
Nagel swore, pulling off her helmet and throwing it across the ATP so that it bounced off a stack of empty boxes. Bomber was already in the GP Small, and I could hear him breaking down the cots.
Hope this doesn't harm our working relationship,
the colonel told me. I grinned at him and told him that it didn't, that it had been a pleasure working with him.
Good, good. Men who understand how this man's army works are hard to come by.
He bid the three of us goodbye and left. I went over and got 5-ton 35, affectionately nicknamed Growler because of a bad tranny gear that made the lower gears sound like a large beast growling. It just made noise, so the mechanics didn't bother replacing it. Not when there was 5-ton 29, which had a tranny that burst into flame every time you threw it in reverse, or 5-ton 16, which the mechanic had gotten into, hit the starter button, and the engine promptly blew up with enough force that the hood had gone through the roof of the motor pool bay and the grill through the wall. Or do 16, which every time it went faster than 10 miles an hour, the bed fell off. Or, well, you get the point. Yeah, 2nd and 19th sucked. Every goddamn thing about 2nd and 19th sucked. Bomber was working hard, something that he was good at. A Texan boy, born and raised on leather and barbed wire. Honest where it counted, a good drinking buddy, and a man to have your back in a fight. I'd once seen him ride and then fuck a Bigfoot. When you share that with a person, you kind of become friends. He was as crazy as me, but was my right-hand man. Working hard and fast, it took us about an hour to break down our little camp. To pull down and repack the camo net, take out the tent liner, and then fold up the tent and the liner to start throwing all the gear into Growler. Some of the tankers helped us out, and we tossed them the pokey bait we still had and the stack of German hardcore porno mags, along with the 2 cases of beer we had left. I fired up Growler. Bomber and Nagel jumped into the gypsy wagon since it didn't smell like Satan's asshole after a night of bad Taco Bell when it started moving, and away we went. 3 fucking hours back to post. And of course, every goddamn Indy 500 driver in all of space-time was on Autobahn 5 and wanted to roar around me, shaking their fists and jabbering German at me. Or maybe they were trying to tell me that the vehicle was on fire, or that William Shatner was fighting a gremlin in the back. How the fuck would I know? I was doing 70 miles per hour in a truck built by Mattel and GMC in 1952. They should have been glad I didn't explode into shards of burning metal as soon as I hit 44 miles per hour. About the only thing you'd see from Growler when it hit 88 miles per hour, downhill with the tailwind, was smoke pouring from underneath, and then me by the side of the road with a fire extinguisher. Again. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't understand German anymore. It all sounded like garbled chattering to me, teasingly familiar but just out of reach, which really pissed me off since I'd been working fluent in it the year before. Being around people speaking German for too long, without having anyone speaking English at all, had a tendency to give me a migraine that would make me go blind if it went on for too long. I could read some words, but other words swam and looked like they were made up of alien characters. Some asshole in the little car cut me off, blaring his horn, but I didn't care. It was the exit anyway. Nagel and Bomber passed me, pointing and laughing, but I knew that they weren't getting the last laugh. About an hour later, we were at the gate of the closed post, with Bomber and Nagel sitting on the bed of the gypsy wagon smoking cigarettes, and glaring at me. The gate guards checked my dispatch, my ID card, then waved me through. I went about 100 yards, then stopped the truck, getting out of it and walking back, and handed the guards the gypsy wagon's dispatch.
Eat it, Aunt,
Nagel snarled. How about after dinner at the NCO club? I shot back. She blushed. Bomber laughed. She punched him in the chest. The gate guards looked at us like we were crazy. We ignored them. The top of the mountain was hidden, rolling black clouds concealing the snowpack at the top. There was a weird fuzzy look to it all, and I cleaned my glasses to make sure it wasn't my eyes. Hey guys, how's the weather on post? I asked. Nagel and Bomber were getting in the truck behind me.
Upper helipad is shut down. It's snowing up there,
the NCO said. I looked up at the mountain again, at the clouds that I knew would be completely covering the top of it, hiding the year-round snowpack, and what lay on the other side of the mountain in an area marked as restricted and off-limits on all maps. We had to return to the unit for God knew how long, while some new poor sucker figured out how the unit worked and made our lives a living hell till he got with the program. A place where the winter before we'd lost 38 personnel due to death by misadventure and other fun causes. A place that was cut off for days or weeks at a time by snow when it started to fall. Where it was snowing. Fuck. I drug my field jacket and the liner out of my rucksack, threw on my cold weather cap and gloves, then climbed back into my Korean War veteran mechanical mule and fired it up. I ran in granny low the whole way up the back hill, the stink of Satan's scorched asshole filling the cab as the tranny roared like a T-Rex who'd just gotten slammed in the ass while it was sleeping. I knew better than let the automatic transmission try to do it itself. The growler would shift up to third gear and the engine would scream like an orgasming banshee while I rolled backwards down the hill and the tranny went, "Rrrr." Deadman's Corner had snow blowing, but there was a rescue crew from main post. An M113 was overturned and they were loading body bags into the ambulance. They'd have to change the sign again. During the summer, during Reforger 88, some asshole had taken the corner with a load of troops in the back of a 5-ton and rolled it, killing like 30 poor bastards. The funny part? An ambulance crew that was from a unit that was from stateside taking part in Reforger took the corner too fast, rolled the ambulance, and died when the ambulance exploded. Well, it seemed funny when I heard it. Maybe you just had to be there. We stopped at the wire and I unlocked the gate, walking over and taking a leak on the pole that held up the sign restricted area and all that good shit. I hated the goddamn place, which is one of the reasons I lived out of my rucksack and duffel bags. Sure, I had some sweet shit in my barracks room, but my roommates and my brother and his knuckle draggers got more use out of my shit than I did. After about an hour, Bomber and Nagel caught up while I sat in the cab of Growler and smoked a cigarette. Both of them were smoking, and Nagel was drinking a beer. Assholes had gone on a main post and grabbed beer, booze, and probably some yummy goodies to munch on. They both gave me the finger as they went by, so I dragged the gate shut and fired up Growler again. Hopefully my brother hadn't grabbed the car and left post already. If he hadn't, I wouldn't ask the platoon sergeant or my section leader for shit. I'd jump in the car and be fucking gone till Monday without saying a word to anyone aside from signing the CQ log and turning in my sensitive items and weapons. I didn't want to spend the night in the barracks any more than I wanted to have my balls replaced by rabid howler monkeys. The snow was crackling as I drove through it, heading steady up in elevation, bouncing off the windshield, more ice crystals than real snow, with visibility dropping to about 50 feet. I took a left at the little branch and hit the gas to surge up the heavy-duty incline to the motor pool and saw Nagel outside the vehicle arguing with some peach fuzz-faced guy and an ugly chick, neither of which I'd ever seen before. Everyone broke off arguing and stared at me as I brushed the fence with the side of the vehicle, left it idling, and climbed out of the passenger door, and promptly fell on my ass. Bomber, of course, laughed at me. Walking over, dispatch in hand, I saw that ugly girl and the Beeve were looking at Nagel's dispatch like she was trying to teach them hyperspace physics, and sighed to myself. Problem? I asked, stopping next to Nagel.
This is a restricted area, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to take your vehicles and leave, or we'll have to call the MPs,
the kid told me. What? No shit, it's a restricted area, genius. Unlock the fucking gate so I can get the fuck out of here before the abominable snowman rapes me or something, I growled at him. I need to turn in my vehicle and get back to the company.
Sir, I repeat, you must leave this area,
the girl said. Look, I'll say this once. I'm in this godforsaken unit, I'm tired, I have to turn in my weapon, and I want to get drunk. Unlock the fucking gate, let me return my fucking vehicle, and get out of my way, I told her.
Sir, I know virtually everyone in the unit and can safely say I've never seen you before,
she sneered.
And since this bitch here,
she nodded at Nagel, who's got that it's killing time look of hers,
claims you're in my platoon, I can safely say that you need to return to your vehicles and leave this restricted area, or I will detain you until the MPs arrive.
Who the fuck are you? I asked. Get the sergeant of the guard out here right fucking now.
Sir, we must insist you take your vehicles and return the way you came, or we will have use for to detain you. This is your last warning,
Ugly Girl told me, and began bringing around her weapon. One thing about 2nd and 19th is that weapons on guard duty and on CQ were not just for show. Every soldier on guard duty and on CQ carried a basic combat load. Back in the day, that meant 6 30-round magazines, bayonet, 4 grenades, and at least 1 flare. If you carried a pistol, you carried 4 magazines. We never got the M9 9mm POS, so it was all 45s. You were only required to give 2 warnings, a warning shot, another warning, and then lethal force. We were literally taught to do this. Halt! 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 All as fast as we could if we were in danger. Sergeants of the guard were told it was better to err on the side of caution, which excuses what Nagel and I did next. Peachfuzz was dropping his weapon off his shoulder, and Ugly Girl had dropped the gypsy wagon's dispatch on the ground and was bringing her weapon up. Both weapons had magazines in the wells. Nagel kneed Peachfuzz in the nuts and picked his rifle up off the ground. I punched Ugly Girl in the face and snatched her weapon out of her hands, turning it around and pressing the muzzle in her throat. Are you fucking retarded? I snarled, shoving hard enough she gagged. She went to grab the upper receiver and I leaned harder. Who's the goddamn motor pool sergeant of the guard?
Fuck you,
she gasped, her lips starting to bleed. Wrong answer. I glanced at her collar on her field jacket and her hat and then her name tag. PFC Oaks. I yelled without turning around. Bomber!
Dude, what?
He asked, stepping up next to me.
You don't need to yell.
Take the fucking rifle, I told him, and then he reached out and pulled it out of my hands, grinning at Ugly Girl.
Don't fuck with me, boy,
he said, then twitched the rifle.
Hands behind your head.
She glared as she did so, and I reached down and scooped her radio off her belt, keying it. Nagel looked down at Peachfuzz and then kicked him in the stomach before looking at me like she was innocent.
Looks like the private fell down and hurt himself,
She told me.
Yep, I saw it. He slipped on the ice,
Bomber answered, and then winked at Ugly Girl. Fucking Bomber, holding an assault rifle in a woman's face and still all Texas suave. Breaknet, this is Corporal Ant. Need Sergeant of the Guard at Motor Pool main gate. Over, I said, keying the radio.
Get up. Face the fence, dumbass.
Nagel ordered, prodding the kid. He groaned and followed instructions. Don't worry, PFC Oaks. I'm sure that Sergeant Roberts will forgive you, I said, squinting into the snow. It looked like someone was on their way.
Who?
She asked, glancing at me real quick. Sergeant Roberts. She looked at me blankly. Sergeant First Class Roberts, 3rd Platoon Sergeant. She still stared at me. What about Lieutenant Turner?
I don't know either of those people, and I've been in 3rd Platoon for almost 9 months.
She told me, glaring. Really? I asked. She nodded. Both of them are gone? Wow. I looked at Bomber. Wonder why they got put out.
Probably gay lovers.
Bomber laughed. Someone was coming out of the snow, limping on crutches.
Probably refused to re-up when they were told they were mission essential,
Nagel snarled. She was still carrying a grudge over being told she couldn't PCS as part of re-enlisting. They'd forced her to request a permanent duty station or be Article 15'd. They didn't say what for, but Nagel wasn't exactly a good girl. Who's in charge of First Squad? I asked her. The arrogant asshole you're pretending to be, Ugly Girl told me.
Well, at least that asshole's still here.
Bomber laughed.
She's probably mad because he fucked her.
Fuck you, she yelled. I didn't recognize the guy who was walking up to the gate on crutches, but still waited. Bomber holding the rifle on Ugly Girl, and Nagel pushing the rifle into the back of Peachfuzz's neck. I bent down and picked up the gypsy wagon's dispatch and put it in the same hand as mine.
What the fuck is going on here?
The guy asked. A staff sergeant by the name of Kelman, according to his name tags. Your gate guards are retards, Nagel snarled.
We're robbing them,
Bomber added. Shut up, both of you, I tossed off, then looked at him. We tried to tell your little privates that we're in this unit, and they drew down on us.
Who the fuck are you?
He asked me. Oh, great. More who's on first bullshit. Corporal Ant, 5th Squad, 3rd Platoon, I told him.
Since I'm the section sergeant for that squad, I doubt that,
he told me. Just look at my dispatch, I said, pushing them through the gap in the gate. He looked doubtful, but picked it up and opened them.
You checked these vehicles out in March?
He asked, looking through the pages.
You've put over 10,000 miles on them.
Yes, Sergeant, I told him.
What about maintenance?
He asked. Host unit handled it. Paperwork is in the dispatch, I told him. So can we put these two pieces of shit up and go back to the barracks?
Gonna let go of my privates?
He asked. Nagel and Bomber snickered and I glared. Let them go, I said, and give them back their weapons. They handed back the weapons while the SOG opened the gates. We got back in the vehicles and pulled them in. I drove over to the line of 5-ton trucks, watching the bumper numbers, looking for the gap where the Growler went and stopped. 5-ton 34, 5-ton 35, 5-ton 36. Wait, what? Sitting there, looking all spiffy, was a 5-ton truck with the same bumper number. Nice of those assholes to tell me they were going to replace my Korean War piece of shit with one made sometime in the last 20 years. I just pulled it to the end of the line, parked it, turned off, chained the steering wheel, threw down my chalk blocks in an oil pan, then ran a half-assed PCMS before heading in with my shit. I was fucking freezing. Bomber and Nagel were standing outside the guy's office waiting on me. I turned in the dispatch and we headed back out. On the way out the gate, Nagel grabbed Ugly Girl by the front of the field jacket and yanked her forward and up so they were nose to nose.
You ever call me a bitch again, you ugly little shit, and I'll break my foot off in your ass. Got me?
She snarled. The cold had paled her skin, but her fury made the long thin scar down the side of her face turn purple. Ugly Girl nodded, and I just smiled at Private Peachfuzz.
You see me in the hallway, you turn around or get against the wall. You understand?
Ugly Girl nodded again.
You don't even speak to me unless you have to, and you don't even mention my name to anyone. Got it?
The girl nodded, and Nagel threw her hard against the fence.
And if you ever try to point a weapon at any of us, I'll shove it up your ass.
She tossed over her shoulder. On the way down the footpath to the barracks, she snarled,
I hate privates.
I chuckled, keeping an eye on the yellow-painted railing that was on the side of the path. That was new, and a good idea. Till the snow got too high, you wouldn't get lost on the way to the motor pool. We walked down to the company, the big building looming out of the snow, and I shivered. The repairs from last winter were finished, but then we'd been gone since March, so even the army was able to get shit done at that speed. The white picket fence was back, and cars were back across the street where people should know better to park during the winter. I grinned, remembering the day a private got in a 6K rough terrain forklift and accidentally backed it through the fence and down onto the cars below, totaling 2nd Platoon's platoon leader's brand new car. In my defense, I thought it'd been funny since he'd been bragging that it would take us enlisted 10 years to save that kind of money. Karma was alive and well in the 2nd and 19th. The middle stairwell door was open a crack when Bomber checked it, so we headed to our rooms by unspoken agreement. Nagel kept going towards titty territory. Bomber and I headed up the stairs to the 2nd floor. My room, good old room 225, had music coming from it. Fucking figures, my roommates were in and using my stereo, or my asshole brother was in there and had probably drank all my booze. Bomber waved, kept going towards 279, while I stopped at my room, dug out my key, and unlocked the door. When the door swung open, I saw 3 guys sitting in chairs, listening to a little boombox, and drinking beer. Great, new roommates. I dragged my 2 duffel bags behind me into the room and stopped in front of my locker. The 3 guys were staring at me while I grabbed the standard U.S. Army brass lock and stuck the key in. It didn't work.
Hey, what the fuck are you doing?
One of them said, jumping up from his chair. Putting my fucking gear away. Why? I asked, turning around and dropping my ruck and rifle on the floor.
Wrong room, asshole.
Another said, standing up. Room 225, right? I asked.
Yeah, so?
The first one said. All 3 of them were in civilian clothing. My room, you little dickweed, I snarled. Who the fuck took my lockers?
I don't know who the fuck you are, but get the fuck out,
The leader told me, stepping forward. Make me, you little shit, I answered. I was sick and tired of the bullshit. I didn't want to come back to the unit anyway, and now someone so fucking new he squeaked was giving me a rash of shit. He walked up, went to push me, and I punched him in the throat, throwing a right into his gut, then smashing a knee into his face when he doubled over. How about you 2 little assholes? I asked, staring at the other 2. Get the fuck out of my room. Go sleep in the day room. I grabbed Bleedy McBigmouth and slung him out in the hallway, bouncing him headfirst off the door across from me. Simon's door.
Fuck you, this is our room,
one of them said. Fine, we do this the hard way, I told them, walking forward. Both of them held up their hands and went past me.
We'll be back with the CO, you asshole,
one told me. I kicked the door shut behind them, grabbed my shit, and went into the room. Nothing of mine was on the walls. My posters were gone, my awards were gone, everything was gone. Even the Amiga 500 I brought to replace my busted one and my IBM were missing. Hearing a racket in the hallway, I grabbed my rifle on the way by and went out the door. At the end of the hallway, Bomber was fighting with 3 guys, 2 of them holding him and 1 beating him. Hey! I yelled, running down the hallway. Get the fuck off him! One of them turned and looked at me.
Beat it, asshole. This doesn't concern you.
He looked back at his buddy. So I clocked him in the kidney and kicked the legs out from under his buddy. Bomber and I finished with the 3 guys who had been beating on him, Bomber dragging one of them to the end stairwell and throwing him bodily down the stairs before stomping back. What the fuck was that about? I asked, looking at the 2 moaning guys at our feet.
Beats the shit out of me. They started yelling at me to get out and then drugged me out in the hall and started kicking my ass.
Bomber yelled. Fuck this. Grab your gear. Let's go down to the CQ area, I told him. I think they changed our rooms.
Nice of them to fucking say something,
Bomber bitched, running in to grab his rifle. He paused to kick one of the guys.
You better hope that they change my room, you little cocksucker. I'm gonna remember you.
Cool it, I told him. We went down to my room and grabbed my gear. Down the hallway, when we reached the double doors, we saw the 3 guys I'd thrown out of my room coming back with like 10 guys. So we took a quick right and then took the stairs to the 1st floor and cut through titty territory in time to see Nagel slam the door behind her.
They moved our rooms, Aunt,
she yelled. She looked pissed. Yeah, me and Bomber figured that out, I said.
Judging from your eye, Aunt, it looks like you solved it like boys,
she snarled.
Let's go get the CQ and turn in our weapons.
In the CQ area was a 4-man crew that was sitting there reading books. When I walked up, everyone turned and stared at us.
What are you doing in these barracks?
The CQ asked.
We live here,
Bomber said.
We're part of the unit,
Nancy offered. The CQ stared at my name tag for a long time, then looked up at me.
I know Sergeant Monkey, buddy, and you ain't him.
That's my brother, I told him. Nagel laughed. He looked doubtful. Look, man, just get the armorer so we can turn in our shit, sign in, find out where they moved our shit, and get some sleep, I said.
Run up and get the armorer,
The CQ said.
He's in the day room watching TV,
The PV2 said, heading towards the day room. What the hell was Clance doing in the day room? That motherfucker had a palace for a room and lived like a king. The guy that came out of the day room was someone I'd never seen before.
Who the fuck are you?
He asked. Man, I was getting tired of this shit. Corporal Ant, Specialist Bomber, Specialist Nagel, 5th Squad, 3rd Platoon, 2nd and 19th Special Weapons Group, I answered. We need to turn in our weapons and NVGs.
And gas mask,
He added. Nope, I work at a live point, I told him.
What?
My ammunition sight has chemical weapons on it. My mask stays with me, I told him, patting it.
We'll see about that,
He answered, but led us downstairs to the armory anyway. We all cleared our weapons, walking down the stairs, and I checked my 203 to make sure I didn't have anything alive in it, like a big hairy spider like last time. A big hairy jumping spider. A big hairy biting jumping spider. That liked officers. He unlocked the cell door, unlocked the main door, then slammed the cell door behind him, closing the lower half of the main door, then stared at us.
Well?
He asked. I handed him the magazines first, and then handed him my weapon. He turned to the racks, stood there for a second, and came back.
This isn't ours,
He told me. What? I stared at him for a minute. Yes, it is. Number 171. See? Right there. He pointed at the weapon rack.
Number 171, right there.
I turned and looked at Nagel, who just shrugged and handed her weapon.
Same thing.
Bomber leaned forward.
Say, partner, mind checking to see if number 172 is there?
The guy checked, then came back.
Yes, it is.
He thought for a moment.
Let me check your weapons against the serial numbers, see if anything comes up. I've only been the armorer for about a month.
He smiled at us as we handed over our weapons, and he took them over to the desk, taking a few minutes to situate himself. What the hell? Nancy asked.
Dunno, maybe they lost us,
Bomber suggested. We stood there, lighting up cigarettes and eventually sitting down. How's it going? I called out.
I've got 500 serial numbers to check, Corporal.
He told me.
Just be patient. Hey, what about our pistols?
Bomber suggested.
I'll check them. Let me see them,
The armorer said. I handed my pistol to Nagel, who took Bomber's and handed them over. He checked for a moment, then said,
Nope, they're already turned in.
Fine, I grumbled, lighting up about the third cigarette. After a few more moments, I heard a boot squeak out in the hallway and turned to look. Something popped into the room, skittering across the floor, and my brain registered it before I even knew what it was consciously. Grenade! All three of us yelled at once, throwing ourselves away from it. It went off, and the world vanished in a white flash and a high-pitched ringing noise. I was thrown out on the ground, face first on the floor, my glasses coming off, and a rifle was jammed in my ear. Before I could even figure out what was happening, my arms were wrenched behind my back and cuffed. Hands patted me down, and I felt my extra magazines pulled from my pockets, my 2 knives removed, and the grenades we hadn't handed back plucked from my ammo pouches. Someone dragged me up by my collar, forcing me on my knees. My vision came back with purple splotches, everything blurry. A half-dozen Rangers stood in front of us, all of them pointing their weapons at us.
Now, just who the fuck are you?
A lieutenant I'd never seen before asked me, folding his arms and looking down at us.
Oh shit,
Bomber breathed. Fuck. It's snowing. Hard. Visibility of maybe 100 feet. There's only 5 of us left. This is why I don't talk about it.